There's a scene near the start of Christopher Nolan's Interstellar where a 10-year-old girl tells her father something is happening in her bedroom. It's the Interstellar ghost scene before we understand it as a ghost scene. Books falling off a shelf, a pattern in the dust, a room trying to speak. She says the ghost is spelling out one word: stay. We remember that as foreshadowing, a sad little detail before the real story kicks in. But look at it again. Murph isn't scared. She isn't confused. She's reading the message correctly, in real time, before the movie gives her father a reason to leave anyway. The room already knows what's coming. She already knows what's coming. He's the only one in that house who gets to pretend he doesn't. We remember this movie as a story about love. Love strong enough to survive time, distance, gravity, the space between galaxies. That's the version we remember. Love transcending time. But sit with the girl in that bedroom a little longer. There's a second story underneath the first one. It's about a daughter who spends her whole life trying to turn her father's leaving into proof that he loved her. Cooper's love is real. That's not in question. What's also real is the hole he leaves behind, and what it costs a kid to fill it. Here's the blunt version. Murph doesn't spend her life waiting for her father. She spends it looking for proof that his leaving still meant he loved her. So unlike many videos about this film, this Interstellar analysis is not about whether the science works. It's about what a 10-year-old girl has to do to survive. Alone, in that bedroom, long after her dad's spaceship disappears into the sky. This is Interstellar. So, quick orientation, because this isn't a plot recap. Earth is dying. Dust storms, failing crops, a slow extinction that shows up in the corn before it shows up on the news. Cooper's a former pilot turned farmer, pulled back in by NASA for a mission that might save the species. He's not leaving for money. He's not leaving out of boredom. He's leaving because the stakes are extinction. And that's exactly what makes the leaving harder to question. Nobody's accusing him of being selfish. We all understand the importance of the mission. His reasons are legitimate. But Murph doesn't get a vote. A kid doesn't process a parent's absence through the math of a dying planet. She has to go through life with an empty chair at breakfast, a bike she has to learn to ride alone, a father who isn't there to hear about her day. Cooper gets a mission. Murph gets a childhood with a hole in it, living her life knowing her dad made her a promise that he can't keep. So here's the thing Murph does with that promise. She can't stop him from leaving, so she spends her life turning the leaving into proof that it meant something. The ghost isn't superstition to her, it's communication, something to decode. Cooper taught her that, to distrust coincidence, to look for the pattern in the noise. That's why the Interstellar bookshelf scene matters so much. When those books start dropping in a rhythm, Murph doesn't see grief. She sees data. She counts the gaps. The watch he gives her before he leaves becomes part of the same project. It's not just a gift. It's the last thing he hands her before he turns into that promise she has to keep alive, by herself, with no help from him. For years. The room does the same work the watch does. It's a haunted room first, then a crime scene, then a lab. By the end of the film, it's the place everything has been pointing back to. None of that happens because the room changed. It happens because Murph refused to let it stay just a room where something bad once happened. That's no longer science fiction. That's a kid trying to make absence make sense. The room wasn't just haunted, it's where the wound lives. And the pattern doesn't stop when she grows up. The same instinct that had her counting gaps in the bookshelf now has her staring down an equation that might justify everything. Still looking, still certain that if she works hard enough at the right kind of proof, the leaving will finally make sense. The clearest place this shows up is after the disaster on Miller's planet. Cooper loses 23 years in just a few hours because of how time bends near the black hole. He comes back to the ship and finds a stack of video messages and watches his son grow up, struggle, marry, age, all in one sitting. It's staged for exactly the effect it has. His face breaking, the silence after, the camera holds on him so long you watch him age right along with the footage. We're built to cry for him in that scene, and it works. But the real wound in this scene belongs to Interstellar's Murph. She's not just aging in these messages. In the last one, she's reached the exact age Cooper was the day he left. And she says so, not as an update, but more like an accusation. She's daring him to explain the difference between his version of that age, which came with the mission and a spacecraft and a species to save, and hers, which came with an empty house and a promise she'd stop believing. Interstellar's Cooper gets the lost years all at once, in a single gutting hour, like a gift he doesn't want to open. Murph had to live every one of them, one at a time, no one editing them down for her. Cooper gets the grief, Murph gets the years. There's a choice in how this film is shot, and it's doing almost all of the emotional work. Cooper gets scaled, open fields, launch pads, the black silence of deep space, alien oceans, a docking sequence scored like a hymn. His absence gets to look huge. Murph gets a bedroom, a farmhouse hallway, a row of monitors, the same watch sitting untouched on the same shelf, gathering the same dust across years the film only shows in fragments. His story is edited like motion, always headed towards the next thing. Hers is edited like repetition. The same room, the same argument with a person who isn't there to argue back. His absence gets a score that swells. Her waiting gets silenced and the hum of a farmhouse at night. Even the camera treats them differently. His shots move forward through space. Hers holds still and let the years pass through the frame instead. And then, in the film's biggest swing, that small bedroom gets folded into a shape spanning her entire life, reaching back through a black hole to save her. The smallest space in the movie turns out to be the most important one in the universe. Cooper got the wormhole, Murph got the same four walls. And the walls win. So here's a pattern that goes well past this one movie. When someone we depend on leaves and can't fully explain themselves, we don't usually just sit with the emptiness. We go back looking for a version of events where the emptiness actually meant something. Anything feels better than nothing. We replay the last conversation for clues we missed. We turn ordinary objects, a watch, a note, a song that happened to be playing, into evidence that we mattered enough to be thought of after the fact. We hold onto a promise long after it stops making sense, because letting go of the promise feels like letting go of the person. The promise mattered because it was all she had left. Almost anything is easier to live with than the plain fact of someone you love being gone, because that version leaves nothing to hold on to. It's just a hole with your name on it. That is why Professor Brand's lie hits Murph so hard. It's not just a twist in the plot, it's a direct hit on the one thing she spent her whole life building. On the surface, it's a science problem. Plan A was never real. The equation was missing a piece it needed. The people on Earth were never actually part of the plan. But Murph doesn't hear a science problem. She hears something worse. If Brand lied, then maybe the mission Cooper left for wasn't what she thought it was. Maybe the promise she built her whole life around was resting on something that was already broken. Maybe her father didn't just leave. Maybe he left for a story the adults around him needed to believe. That's why this cuts deeper than the math. It's not about the equation. It's about the one thing Murph has been protecting since she was 10. The idea that leaving meant something. If that's not true, then the ghost wasn't a message. The watch isn't proof. The waiting wasn't faith. It was just a kid, alone in a room, trying to survive a wound nobody around her knew how to name. And this is where it gets uncomfortable, because Murph isn't the only one running that program. So are we, watching. That's the part most Interstellar Explained videos rush past. We need the ghost to have really been Cooper. We need the watch to have really been carrying his message the whole time. We need the room to matter, because the plain version of this story, a father leaves, a daughter waits, years pass, and nothing gives those years back, is too hard to sit with for 2.5 hours in the dark. So the film gives us something bigger instead. It gives us a reason, and it does it so well we stop noticing we asked for one. When the reveal finally lands, that the watch really was taking out a message the whole time, that the ghost really was him, the relief isn't just Murph's, it's ours also. We needed that meaning almost as badly as she did. The tears that follow aren't really about a father coming home. They're about being handed the explanation we didn't know we were waiting for. Which brings the movie back to where it started. In the beginning, Murph tells her father the room is warning him not to leave. By the end, that same room is what he uses to reach her across time and galaxies. Proof, finally, that the leaving was part of something bigger than either of them understood in the moment. The ghost turns out to be the father. That's the real Interstellar ending explained, at least emotionally. She doesn't get her childhood back. She doesn't get the years back. She gets an explanation instead. And the film is betting that's close enough to feel like a happy ending. For most of the audience, that bet pays off completely. In the end, we see an old woman near the end of her life, surrounded by her own family she built, telling the young man standing in front of her that she always knew he'd come back, because her dad promised her. That's not the wormhole talking. That's a grown woman still keeping the faith of a 10-year-old child alive. So here's the harder truth underneath the love story. Interstellar isn't just telling us love can survive distance and years and the bending of physics. It's showing us how badly we need love to explain the damage it leaves behind. Cooper loved Murph. He also left her, for years, with no certainty and no say in the matter. No version of the ending changes the fact that a 10-year-old had to grow into an adult without her dad. Both of these things are true at once. Cooper gets to cry in a cockpit over messages he can't answer. Murph gets to be proven right that the room was trying to warn him from the get-go. The movie needs you to hold both at once. The father who loved her and the girl he still left behind. If Interstellar turns a father's absence into destiny, there's another film that runs the same wound through a much smaller machine. One father leaves for the stars and comes back a hero. The other one never really leaves the house at all. He just disappears through it. One missed dinner, one skipped bedtime, one fast-forwarded moment at a time. That's Click, a much goofier movie on the surface, mostly remembered as a gimmick about a magic remote control. But underneath the jokes, it's carrying the same ache without light years to dress it up. Where Interstellar turns absence into destiny, Click turns it into a habit. And habit might be harder to forgive. Thank you so much for watching and supporting my channel. I'll see you in the next one. And until then, as always, please take care of yourself.